Hey everyone, and welcome to Tony for Stand and Be Judged. Tony for you. In a great number of mythologies and religions, the cardinal directions are of paramount importance. The direction of the sun, where the wind blows, the migration patterns of the animals. It has been and always will be important to humanity regardless of the time. That being said, in simpler times before modern science came in and spoiled everyone's spiritual fun, there were gods and demons representing everything you could think of. Within the Buddhist religion exist the four heavenly kings. Throughout all of Asia, these gods or Devas stand as guardians of the four cardinal directions and protectors of the world. Measuring each 1/4 the height from the earth to the heavens, they serve to protect humanity from all manner of evil influence and the Buddha's teachings alongside them. The kings each have different roles, colors associated with them, weapons of choice, and do so much more than just cleave demons all day. So, let's dive a little deeper into the great protectors of humanity and learn more about the four heavenly kings. First and foremost, let's do some background. These beings are in the Buddhist religion, which spans a vast amount of land and cultures. They can also be seen in many other regional practices. Throughout the continent, they may go by many names and can look very different. I'll cover as many substantial differences as I can, but there is simultaneously so much and so little known explicitly about these gods, it will be hard. Also, in talking about these gods, keep in mind I'm not fluent in the Chinese languages, Sanskrit, or even Japanese, so bear with me as I try to pronounce these names. Alright, let's get into it. First up is the Guardian of the North, Bishamonten. This fierce deity has a long lance as well as a miniature stupa in his other hand. Stupa means heap in Sanskrit, and despite its unassuming name, they are important parts of Buddhist architecture and can be quite extravagant depending on which one you go to. What's interesting is, depending on where he is worshipped and in what context he appears, the orientation of his belongings are different. In Japan, he holds the spear in his right hand and a pagoda in his left. In China, he holds the spear in his left hand and a pagoda in his right. And in places like Tibet, India, and others, he holds the spear in his left hand and a stupa in his right. He is very rarely seen with the spear in his dominant hand, or when he does appear in such a way, the spear is often covered or blunted in some way. The symbolism of him holding a miniature holy site in his hands is powerful, especially considering it was a gift from the Buddha himself. Bishamonten is also sometimes referred to as Teimonten, meaning listening to many teachings. This name is descriptive, as he is said to guard with fervor the many places where the Buddha taught in life. Despite being a fierce god of war and defender of the North, he is very rarely portrayed in such a menacing way. His presence is supposed to bring peace and understanding to the people he watches over. In China, he is known as Bishamonten, a god associated with war, and in other Buddhist parts of the world he is known as Vesravana, a god associated with wealth. In Shin Megami Tensei, he is portrayed in much the same way. He is a tall and fierce deity whose skin is dark blood red. He holds a stupa made of gold in his right hand, and in his left what looks like a small spear with no obvious point. His gold attire is most likely a reference to the god of wealth association he has in certain parts of the world. His stance is also most likely a reference to Teimonten's statue dating back to 13th century Japan made of wood on display in the Nara National Museum. His spear hidden from sight and the stupa gifted to him from the Buddha on full display. A very interesting start to the four heavenly kings. Second, we have the Guardian of the East, Jikokuten. This deity has a name literally translating to Guardian of the Nation. This is quite possibly the most outwardly menacing of the four heavenly kings, which makes sense as being the Guardian of the East, Japan's most commonly attributed direction, what with it being the land of the rising sun and all, would carry some weight and demand respect. He also carries the most weapons of war in his arsenal. In his right hand he carries a sword held on full display, no hiding behind the back anymore, and in his other hand he carries a large trident. Sometimes, however, he is said to carry a lute alongside his sword. The stringed instrument is a representation of the middle way of Buddhism. Strings, if too tightly wound, will break, but if wound too loose, no sounds would be produced. In order to bring out beauty, a middle ground between the two extremes must be walked, thus the middle way. In China, he is called Qiguo Tian, meaning king who holds a country, and instead of being a guardian of the land through force, he is considered to be the god of music. With his pipa stringed instrument, he plays notes carrying the teachings of the Buddha, which are used to convert sentient beings to the right path. Knowing this, his name's translation carries a powerful message. No blood need be spilled if the enemy can be swayed through the teachings and love of the Buddha. Even in his Japanese, more overtly dangerous design, his sword is never considered to be used to kill humans. He is said to use the blade to cut the strings of evil that puppeteer us alongside the demons. He cuts us free from the restraints of the evils of this world. In Shin Megami Tensei, he is portrayed with skin a piercing yellow, much like the rays of the sun, and the sword on prominent display akin to his statue depictions. His armor is a deep green, with dragons' heads as pauldrons, alluding to his association with the Chinese dragon protectors. His stance is also likely a reference to the Nara-era 8th century clay statue at Todaiji Temple, a dangerous yet graceful being dedicated to the protection of humans. Third, we have the Guardian of the South, Zouchouten. This deity has a name meaning Lord who expands, or Lord who enlarges. Quite an interesting name, but one that is of paramount importance, at least to the people at the time. But this is less literal than you would imagine for the warring states across Asia. Often portrayed with a long spear, he represents spiritual growth over just domain expansion. On some occasions, Zouchouten is displayed with a vajra over a trident or spear, which is another weapon more closely associated with the Buddhist teachings. This heavenly king is quite possibly the one portrayed most differently throughout the regions. In Japan, Zouchouten is dressed in blue with a spear. In China, called Senjiang Tianwang, he is associated with the color red, similar to the sacred red bird guarding the same region and holding the vajra. And the differences aren't merely visual, with very little set in stone for this guardian's purpose. From his name's translation, we can understand that he helps those who come to him grow in knowledge of the Buddhist teachings, and in China he is said to help humans grow in compassion. The Vajra club in Buddhism is less a weapon when compared to the Hindu depictions and more of a symbolic tool representing a branch of Buddhism called the thunderbolt or diamond, translating to Vajrayana. The tool is meant to symbolize indestructibility and is often crafted with a bell on the other side. In Shin Megami Tensei, he is portrayed as a green-skinned being draped in blue, holding a spear in some games and the Vajra in others. Seems like not even the games can settle on one depiction of the deity. His design is most likely based on the wooden statue of the Heian era at Horyuju Temple in Nara. One of the most enigmatic of the four heavenly kings, but also probably the most interesting as well. The fourth and final heavenly king is the Guardian of the West, Koumokuten. His name meaning wide-eyed or expansive vision. Coming off the heels of the most esoteric heavenly king, we have possibly the most understood. Koumokuten is said to see through and punish evil, as well as encourage those who seek enlightenment. Contrary to his unassuming demeanor, this guardian is one of the only that is said to actually dole out punishments that can harm humans in some way. Despite this, he most likely does not carry out the punishments himself. He is most often depicted holding a scroll and brush with which to write down the deeds of mortals and share the teachings of the Buddha. Koumokuten is draped in red armor with cool blue skin. The deeds of humans are noted down and contemplated on for the karmic balance of the moral soul. Better be on your best behavior for him. In China, this deity has a vastly different description though. Here called Guangnu Tianwang, he is depicted as having red skin gripping a red lasso in one hand and a red naga in another. The Naga, which are a race of half-human, half-serpent beings, are led by the guardian deity Guangmu, which help him snare humans with the lasso into the Buddhist faith. Somewhat of a strange way to spread their religion, but if it works, it works. With the fact that he is so well known, there really isn't much to speculate on. He is the deity that records the sins of man and promotes those faithful to the Buddha's teachings. Beautiful in its simplicity. Despite him often lacking a weapon, he is still portrayed standing atop a demon in his sculptures, here called a jaki, alongside his other guardians. Make no mistake, even without a weapon, you can never underestimate a heavenly king. In Shin Megami Tensei, Koumokuten is portrayed in his Japanese depiction, with blue skin and holding a brush and parchment. Probably a good call, since the nagas and lasso would be a bit of a blind side for the more passive guardian. His design is most likely based on the painted clay statue dating back to the 8th century at Todaiji Temple in Nara. The four heavenly kings are ubiquitous throughout most of Asia. The differences between the deities vary anywhere from looking completely different to basically being the same. For example, the pipa instrument that Jikokuten has is an often omitted part of his statues in Japan, and more common in China. And Koumokuten is almost completely different in his depictions and domain between China and Japan, with his sovereignty over the Naga race and less than consensual way he gets people to adhere to the Buddhist teachings. The four are often displayed adhering to their cardinal directions, with a central figure in the middle. In mythology, this being is called Taishakuten, or in Sanskrit known as the god Indra, king of the Devas. Sharing the name with a god of Hinduism, there he is a god of weather, the sky, and war, as well as king of all Devas. When incorporated into Buddhism, however, he is known as the Lord of the Center. Said to live in the Palace of the Correct Views at Heaven's Peak, he governs the other 32 gods and is attended to personally by the aforementioned 4 heavenly kings. In Japan, he is known as the god of wealth, though not necessarily material wealth, as with the other deities of Buddhism, they valued spiritual and inner wealth above all worldly desires. Taishakuten defends humans and even the other gods from all manner of evil with the power to revive those who fall in battle, and it's said in his home he let no suffering or sorrow come to pass. Interestingly, in Japanese artwork, Taishakuten is depicted riding an elephant, much like his depictions of Indra in Hinduism, and even sharing the unique trait of the elephant having 33 heads, symbolizing the other 33 gods of the heavenly realm he governs. With elements of a sun god and a creator god, he is as close to a supreme being in Buddhism as you could possibly get. Sadly, Taishakuten is not depicted in Shin Megami Tensei, but his Chinese variant is. This requires more explanation though. In Chinese myth, alongside the 4 heavenly kings, they also have the 4 sacred beasts that serve much the same purpose. Each 4 of these beasts represents a different season, direction, time of day, and type of karma. The azure dragon of the east, representing spring, dawn, the color blue, and young yang. The vermilion bird of the south, representing summer, midday, the color red, and old yang. The white tiger of the west, representing autumn, dusk, the color white, and young yin. And finally, the black tortoise of the north, representing winter, midnight, the color black, and old yin. The yin and yang of these 4 beasts, along with the symbolism of their different times of day, represents the Taijitu symbols of inseparable contradictory opposites in all things. The famous yin-yang symbol personified beautifully in the beasts of the land. These 4 legendary animals hold many similarities with the 4 heavenly kings. In addition to them guarding the 4 cardinal directions, they even have a central figure, which in this case is actually portrayed in Shin Megami Tensei. The yellow dragon, Koryu, or Huanglong, is the central deity of the sacred beasts, representing the center, midsummer, the color yellow, and the element of earth, along with the entirety of the Taijitu symbol. Diving into the full meaning of these beasts is a tall order and requires another full video, though their importance to the 4 heavenly kings could not be ignored, so I thought I'd add a little bit about them. Byakko, Genbu, Suzaku, and Seiryu, along with their leader, Koryu, are all depicted beautifully in Shin Megami Tensei, accompanying their Japanese humanoid compatriots. That covers the 4 heavenly kings, and a little of the sacred beasts of China. Let me know which one is your favorite in the comments down below, and while you're down there, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. The deities that span multiple religions and cultures are always the most fun to learn about, but quite the headache to research, so I hope you liked it. Special thanks to ZZZ, Andre Vinicius da Silva Valens, Arctic Mirror, Kalos, Kerhos, Goose Kebab, Jem Morales, Just a Middleman, Matt M, Not Catchy, Patty123, The Digital Dutchman, VideoGamer75, Zeba Neba, and many more for supporting the channel on Patreon. If you'd like to support, check the link in the description below. Thanks for watching this Guardian Deity Roundup, and I'll see you in the next Tony for You. Have a good one.